Hello, everybody. Once again, we are here for another episode of the SLTD Going Over Big Time podcast. I am the Fantastic. This is Mike. And we're here to talk about the latest goings on in professional wrestling. There's a lot of hot feuds going on, a lot of hot rivalries. Um, really, like all the main companies right now are, as they say, cooking.
hmm
Yeah, and to varying degrees. And so we're just gonna. There's a lot, but tonight we're just going to try to focus on six of them because I think they have get gotten the most attention, and we can probably expand or dissect some of the way things have turned out so far and dive deep into it. So, Mike, do you want to? So, we've agreed to talk about the following six rivalries. So, CM Punk versus Drew McIntyre, AEW versus the Elite, the Wyatt Six, and whoever they're targeting, I guess. Right now it's Chad Gable, but then they're gonna move on to somebody else. Tony Storm and Mariah May, which really just recently flared up. The I guess you could call it the love triangle of Rhea, Liv, and Dominic Mysterio, and MJF versus Will Ospreay. So which one do you want to start with, Mike?
I guess we'll start with CM Punk and Drew McIntyre because I
Okay.
think that is probably out of all of them, probably the hottest one. I would say. Um, so this feud kind of happened because, and mainly because CM Punk couldn't work at WrestleMania and was supposed to face Seth, and so they had to pivot to something else for Punk to be involved on TV somehow going into WrestleMania. And Drew was on this. Drew has been the best character all around on WWE television for quite some time now. Mainly because he's playing that heel that is right. He he's coming off as a heel, but everything he is saying even before Punk was involved, is correct. And people still obviously are going to boo him because he's a heel, but most people will look at it and be like, "Oh, well, what he's saying is actually true. What he's saying is actually like makes a lot of sense." And I think that based on the things that he has said about CM Punk, we can agree that that is also true. Um, so when they first interacted, Drew talked about how he had some resentment towards Punk because of how Punk was supposed to be a locker room leader in 2013, 2014, around the time that Drew got fired. And he didn't go out of his way for him. He didn't act like a locker room leader. He didn't give Drew advice. He didn't do anything to make Drew believe in him as a locker room leader. And I think a lot of that stuff has been very prevalent in CM Punk feuds, even going back to last year in AEW, where they talked about how, and still are to this day, talk about how he is very polarizing in the fact that he will say what's on his mind, but CM Punk is all about CM Punk. Always has been and always will be.
I mean, there's nothing wrong with. I don't think there's really anything wrong with that. I mean,
No, not at all.
every wrestler, every professional wrestler in the industry is really at the end of the day they have to focus on their own careers, and if they are in a position, if they rise to the level where they can be a sort of like example, locker room leader, whatever term you want to use, it's only a benefit to the locker room, yes, but as we said, like pro wrestling is full of egos. Everybody thinks they're the best at what they do, right? So you're gonna encounter that anywhere. Um, yeah, I mean, the stuff you're talking about, yeah, this feud could you could say if you want to draw it back that far, goes back 10 years at least. And I mean, it really picked up again at last year at Survivor Series when Punk surprisingly showed up at in Chicago.
Hmm.
There was that clip. There was that clip that was circulating online, it was showing Drew leaving the storming out of the ringside area, and just going to the back. At that time, they said it was what they weren't sure exactly what that was related to. They said
Yeah.
it was not related to the Punk appearance, but the
So
way it kind of played off, it did look like it was.
there was
Um,
conflicting reports
yeah,
because there was reports saying that everybody that was in the ring knew that he was coming out and they were told like right before they walked out. Then there was also reports saying that none of them knew
mm,
or only a select few of them knew. Um, I would have to believe that Seth was aware because Seth was one of those people who was
yeah.
very against him.
He reacted very openly. He was shown to be
Yes,
extremely angry
yes.
when he showed up.
So Drew wasn't visibly upset. He just left before
Yeah,
anything could happen, and I think that them interacting on TV was kind of like the first instant of them like showing their differences and Drew finally expressing how he felt about Punk.
right,
And that ended up in the long run of things of um Punk getting hurt at the Rumble, Drew being the reason, quote
right.
unquote. And then Drew being happy about it.
Yeah,
And
and then yeah, it was an unfortunate accident in the Rumble, which I think to their credit, they Drew played it off beautifully, and he really carried a lot of that feud as Punk was sidelining that he's not able to wrestle. Where he's still not 100% cleared out as of this time. It's been what 7 months, and Drew really carried it through social media, through every
mhm,
Monday Night Raw. You know, up till when he got his up till WrestleMania when he got his title match against
yeah.
Seth.
One of the best parts of that build up to Mania was when Drew made got that shirt made that he took that he made from a meme that was from a so this picture was a real picture from um around the time. I don't know if you watched a lot of the CW superhero shows, but there was like the Flash and Arrow and all of that stuff on the CW. And towards the end of Arrow and Flash, there was a there was an episode where spoilers if you haven't seen this, but um, in Arrow, Oliver Queen, played by Stephen Amell, dies,
Yeah,
and the scene that this picture is taken from is from a set photo where they have a tombstone that says "Here lies Oliver Queen," and everybody in the episode taking a picture with the tombstone.
yeah. Okay, so I have it on my other screen. I'm gonna try to pull it up. I don't know if I can. Let me see here. Uh yeah, so so just briefly show so it's I guess it's this
Yes.
one, right? Yeah, so it's
So
the
so yeah, they basically took that picture and made their own version of it.
right.
Um, of and Drew turned this into a T-shirt,
Yes.
and yeah, it was the cat. I think it
Amazing
was
stuff. I mean, I see
one
like
of the
yeah,
best things that he did
yeah, I
leading
mean
into Mania.
yeah, I mean I see other versions of it like in yeah, like I think I think this might have been the one that was on the t-shirt. I don't know, but this one also the first that was that one where he was just like laughing maniacally. Now this one looks more
So that's the picture of
yeah. Oh,
because if
that's
you
the
see,
picture from the arrow.
yeah,
Oh,
that's the picture from the Arrow episode or the Flash
okay.
episode
Oh.
that just has Drew's head over the
Yeah.
Flash's body.
Right.
So Drew made that on social media, and then they made their own version.
Yeah.
Um,
I mean, it was amazing. It was like,
yeah.
I mean, yeah,
I mean, you talk about using social media to the fullest. That's what Drew McIntyre's been doing in
right.
everything that he's been doing recently,
Yeah.
but especially with CM Punk. He also has that T-shirt that that says DM Hunk on it,
Okay.
um, which is just a play on CM Punk's name
Right.
as a rib, I guess. And yeah, so the thing that I've kind of had an issue with, and I guess time of recording, we're gonna find out more about this on Raw because, so the build to this obviously led to WrestleMania where Drew beat Seth for the world title.
Mhm.
Seth was going away on injury anyway, so we knew he was losing the belt. Um, and then Drew got in CM Punk's face because CM Punk was on commentary, and CM Punk caused Drew McIntyre to get cashed in on by Damian Priest.
Yep.
Damian Priest, who is still the current World Heavyweight Champion since that day. And ever since then, it has been Drew's goal to hurt CM Punk at every possible opportunity. And then every single time Drew got an opportunity towards a title or a shot at a title, CM Punk would return and cost him the title. This has
Right.
happened 3 times already.
Yeah. Because CM Punk said that as long as we both work here, you're never gonna become a champion again.
Yes, it
So
happened. It happened during the number one contenders match for
yes.
Backlash.
Yep.
Then it happened again in the title match,
Clash at the Castle.
Clash at the Castle. Then it happened.
Which I would say it was brilliantly done. The camera work was amazing. The
Yeah.
situation first was the referee took
Well,
an
I didn't like the
insane
referee thing. I didn't like it.
took an insane bump outside, completely taken out. Drew goes for the pin, and I'll just have a little side note here. I don't know why wrestlers go for a pin when they know that a referee has been knocked out of commission. Anyway, they did an
Mhm.
angle where a referee guy slides in and you just see him from the back going 1, 2, and he stops counting, like the way Shane McMahon stopped the count and screwed over like Mankind or Austin. I think it
Yeah.
was
Mhm.
25 years ago, and he turned around and it's CM Punk in a referee shirt, which
Yeah.
in a sense I'm like, doesn't really make sense. I'm like, they showed a video of him like going up to Jessica Carr, like, hey Jessica, can I borrow Jessica Carr, one of the senior female referee? Go up,
Yeah.
hey, can I just borrow a referee shirt? And he's like, oh, okay, sure. And then I'm like, you just give away referee shirts like for
Yeah. And
nothing.
and her response was, "What do you need it for?" And he said, "Oh, don't worry
Uh,
about that."
the,
Or
like, I'm like, these are like the WWE officials. Like, aren't there supposed to be some rules around this kind of thing?
yeah, because in common sense would
Yeah,
factor in that, like, oh, if a referee gets knocked out, there's got to be one in Gorilla that's ready to go just in
yeah.
case that happens. Is that not the case this time? Was there no referee ready to go just in case the
See,
referee
wait,
assigned to the match?
would have made way more sense if like Punk just kind of sneaked in the back, kind of looked around and waited until like one of the referee, if there was like a pile of referee shirts,
Uh
and
huh.
whoever was watching it like stepped away for a second, and then Punk sneaks over, grabs the shirt, and then like sneaks out again. That would have made more sense,
Yes,
right?
exactly.
It was like what?
So this is the second time that he got screwed out of a title
Yep.
shot by Drew. And then the third time was at Money in the Bank, where Drew, who had won the ladder match
Yeah.
the night before, I mean the earlier in the night, sorry, um,
Okay, so
cashes in.
Drew won the Money in the Bank match in
Yeah,
Toronto. I was there by the way,
yes, you were there.
yes, and then during the World Heavyweight Title match between Damian Priest and Seth Rollins, Drew comes in and literally copies Rollins's cash in up formula, makes it a triple threat match.
Yep.
And then once again, CM Punk comes in and starts beating the heck out of Drew. It's a no DQ stipulation because it's a triple threat,
Yep.
and cost Drew the match. And yeah,
Yeah.
and
But in between each of these, so especially, I think the best one in between those two matches was the Friday after Clash at the Castle,
mhm.
where CM Punk, for some reason,
Oh
just because, and this isn't going to be
yeah,
like a, all right. So we've had our in the past, we've talked about on here and privately how the brand split should matter, and it doesn't, because CM Punk, who is assigned to Raw, just came to SmackDown because it was in Chicago.
yeah.
And that night was when he first interacted with Payman and Solo and all of that. And then later in the night, during a random segment where DIY and A Town Down Under are talking, we hear some noise in the background. It's one of those metal garage doors, and the door opens with Drew McIntyre standing over a bloody CM Punk. And he carries him to the ring, to the stage, and drops him on the stage.
Right.
And then steals a bracelet that was made by a fan literally a week before that says AJ and Larry on it,
Yes.
because he wanted to take something that meant as much to CM Punk as the world title meant to him, which again makes no sense because that bracelet was made like a week before.
So okay, I know you are extremely like I don't know how to describe like you have a conviction that if you're gonna have a brand split, adhere to the brand split. Either that or don't
Yes.
have it at all.
Yes.
I'm a little more lenient in that. Okay, it was stupid for them to just because CM Punk will just show up because in Chicago. I think I look at it this way: if it was advancing the storyline in even a small bit, then I think it was justified to just do it that one time.
Mm-hmm.
Um, I mean, I think I can do away with like if the SmackDown was the SmackDown before Money in the Bank. Uh, do you really have to do the whole thing where like each participant from Money in the Bank, the guys from Raw come into SmackDown just because they need a confrontation? I don't
Uh-huh.
know. But just for that, for the Chicago thing, I think okay, look, fine, whatever, Chicago. Blah, they need a big pop. Sure, CM Punk will show up, do a big pop. I think I
Well,
think it was justified because it helped advance the storyline a bit, where Drew like bloody Punk to a pulp, stole that
yes.
little stupid bracelet thing as a part of the storyline.
Yes. So
Any
I
other
get that.
time,
So
probably
I
should.
get that. However, if that's the case, then don't have SmackDown in Chicago. Simple as that. Just have Raw
Oh
in
man,
Chicago.
they need to build up another guy and like draft him on SmackDown, so at least they can have one guy from Chicago that they can
Yeah.
use here and there. But anyway, yeah.
So
So
good.
this all became before Money
So
in the Bank. We
yes.
all
So
thought
that
Punk
was the
was like,
best. That was the best
yeah,
angle they did so far
yeah,
during the
right,
feud.
yeah,
And that of course led us to the Money in the Bank stuff because we hadn't seen CM Punk since.
hmm
We knew exactly where it was going as soon as Drew got it put into the Money in the Bank match, that he was going to win, cash in the same night, and ultimately be the one who got pinned again.
mm.
And further, and this is just a added criticism, but furthering the fact that Damian Priest has not had a successful title defense without interference
Yeah.
every single time. And that's fine. That's for another time. But uh so then that brings us to the following Raw, which uh all right.
Well,
Again,
how about okay? Let's finish off on the Money in the Bank stuff first. So, um, what I noticed, and I think you discussed this also with me and Tanner offline as well. There was a lot of discussion and a very polarized split about whether the Money in the Bank briefcase should have been sacrificed to further this feud, or should it have just gone to somebody else?
Hmm.
Because yeah, as soon as that happened, this was the shortest reign of Money in the Bank. I think one of the shortest. It was just like just within a few hours that the men's Money in the Bank briefcase was cashed in.
I mean, there's been
Um,
multiple same night
yeah,
cash ins,
people
but
always said, "Oh, why did they waste this Money in the Bank briefcase?" And then others were saying they gave long, detailed explanations. Look, this was
yes,
advancing a storyline. We just finished a Money in the Bank run with Damian Priest, who held it on
yes,
one of his longest times. And now we've gone on to Tiffany Stratton, who I think will probably hold it even longer because she is that sort of conniving character. And she said she's going to spruce it up and make it look like a person, which is very interesting. I'll like to see how they do that. But yeah,
hmm
I'm of the opinion that, look, I think as long, because I said it before, if this was advancing a storyline, then I think it would have worked because, like, I'm thinking like other options that were like next to Drew. I think it was we thought maybe Jay Uso carrying around a briefcase would have been probably like the next best person, but I mean
yeah,
it would have made sense if you cashed it in on Gunter or somebody like that. But considering what we're looking at with like this bloodline stuff, I think at some point Jay is going to be roped back into that,
of course,
and you kind of would leave the Money in the Bank briefcase almost as like a just a in the background, and there's always a risk there because you put it on of the wrong guy, you could always run the risk of like doing the cash in wrong. Like they since
like Austin
unless
Theory and
yeah
Baron
yeah yeah
Corbin.
exactly until Damian Priest came along, the last couple of Money in the Bank I guess cash-ins or people holding it, they didn't really do it very well. Otis had it, like that was the weirdest one of all, and he didn't even get to cash it in. He lost it to the Miz, who then used it. Austin Theory, as you mentioned, was probably the worst Money in the Bank cash-in attempt ever. He cashed in on the wrong title,
Yeah,
but yeah, I mean, as long as I think this is my opinion, and you can disagree with me on this, as long as it advanced this storyline even further. I mean, we saw the post Money in the Bank press conference or whatever when there was that panel, and Drew came out like a screaming like a maniac and say, "I know where you live, punk. You're not leaving this building alive," and stuff like that. And then the referees
yeah,
come out and he's like elbowing them in the face and punching them away. Adam Pearce had to come out. He gets elbowed in the face, and then at that point you just completely lost it. Like he
I
was like Wade Barrett had to restrain
well,
Drew to the point where he's like,
yeah,
"You like touch him again, you're gonna be fired, and you're never gonna get CM Punk
and
ever
I've
again."
actually really liked that added wrinkle to it because everybody is aware that Wade Barrett and Drew
Yeah,
are
yeah,
very good friends,
very.
and Wade Barrett has never been a fan of CM Punk either, going back to Nexus,
Yeah, well,
and
you almost forget about that.
and yeah, so I've actually really liked that wrinkle to it. That that post thing that he did at the panel with the refs and Pierce was really well done. I was kind of expecting. It didn't make much sense to me that CM Punk was on the press conference at all,
He's
considering
like,
that
yeah, because if you got this nutcase Scotsman running around backstage, like you could just show up anywhere, right?
like he
Meanwhile,
didn't
CM
have a
Punk's just
match.
eating.
He
CM Punk's just sitting there eating Tim Hortons donuts and like, oh, okay.
I mean, that seems to be his new bit now uh, a rib on the fans because the last time he did that was All Out, and
Oh, right.
he seems to do that at every press conference now whenever he's asked to do them. But it just didn't make much sense to me that he was on the conference at all, considering he didn't have a match, he wasn't advertised, he just showed up to screw Drew again. So why are we giving the guy who screwed the challenger to the title an open mic to just talk?
Yeah, I mean, the other kind of inconsistency, and I think they tried to address this recently in storyline, is like, why is Drew getting all this punishment when he's the one that's being like he's the one that's doing like going to work and doing his what he was
Yes.
assigned to do, which is wrestling
And
matches.
they kind of
CM Punk
addressed
shows
that.
up and just interferes, stealing referee shirts. Like, why isn't he getting penalized? And Drew was like indefinitely suspended by Pierce, and then they tried to
Yeah.
address it because they said, "Oh, each guy's getting fined like $25,000 or whatever."
Yeah.
But
Well, they
yeah,
tried to address the fact that yes, CM Punk has gotten involved in every single one of Drew's title matches since WrestleMania, or title opportunities since WrestleMania, and he can't be doing that. So yeah, I don't want another month of this, because we've done the same exact thing 3 pay-per-views in a row, and the pay-per-views are too close together now to just keep doing the same exact thing over and over and over again. I mean, I get Drew's not getting a title shot at SummerSlam, so it's not like you can even have something like that. Like, what's Drew going to do at SummerSlam if he's not facing CM Punk?
right. And as
You
of this
know?
recording, Raw is going to be the day after we finish, and Drew has been
Yeah.
invited back after his week-long suspension to address concerns. So they're gonna like try to figure out how
Yeah.
to move forward and all that stuff. And
Yes, because
uh,
CM Punk just wants to finally put this behind him and have a match with Drew. I don't
yeah, I think at
see.
this point he's getting close to being cleared because of the stuff he's done in the ring. I think he's getting to the
Yes.
point where he's fine now.
So yeah, I hope that we finally get this blow off at SummerSlam, or at
Yeah,
least get something. I mean, because I have a feeling it won't be just a one-time match.
no,
And
I
they just
mean,
announced Bad Blood,
right.
so you gotta do a Hell in the Cell there.
Yeah,
And
and which I've would laugh at because CM Punk was at the press conference was like, "I'm not getting the hell in a cell. What, you crazy?"
yeah,
And they're gonna put him right, they're gonna put him straight in hell in a
well,
cell just
first
to
he
end the
needs to
story.
have a match without getting hurt. Let's get
Yeah.
there first.
Okay.
Let
Yeah. Yeah.
let's have CM Punk have a actual match without getting hurt, because the first match he had coming back to WWE was the Royal Rumble,
Yeah.
and that's it. So he's had more returns than he's had matches in WWE.
Right. Yeah.
So,
Okay. So let's hope this thing blows off by SummerSlam slash Bad Blood or whatever,
well,
because
it's gonna
because
at
yeah,
least get a match out of it by
yeah,
SummerSlam.
get a match.
I mean,
Yeah.
if you're gonna tell me on screen that he's not cleared, even though he clearly is, otherwise he wouldn't be getting physically involved. If you're gonna tell me he's not cleared, then do the Shawn Michaels thing from 2002 and say it's an unsanctioned street fight or something like that, because you can't go into SummerSlam and not do something with these guys. You
Yeah.
have to. You
Yeah.
have to.
Yeah, I mean, look, this is the first feud we're talking about but this feud is like the only one that I think, well, there are others, but this one is right now. These two haven't even had an actual match yet, and this thing has sustained itself for the last 7 months or so. So yeah,
Yeah.
let's hope there's a blow off, one match or two matches that will finally, finish this thing, and I
Yeah.
guess both these guys can move on.
Yeah.
Let's look at the next rivalry, and this one really picked up just this past week on AEW Dynamite. And it's a new one. It's Tony Storm versus Mariah May. Their match is going to be at All in London for the AEW Women's World Title, but for the past year or so, they weren't feuding. They were like a master and apprentice relationship, and Mariah was like Tony's daughter in a sense, and they were
Hmm.
all fine and dandy. And Mariah, like, was all by Tony's side this entire time. She even adopted Tony's old theme entrance music and her
And going into
uniform,
Forbidden Door,
going to Forbidden Door with in a
Mina
match
Shirakawa.
between Tony and Mina Shirakawa from Stardom, and they had this great post match celebration in the ring, and they all kind of like hop skibbity
Oh,
dude out the ring together, and then
yeah.
um
So
and then
I kind of want to start from the beginning, right?
yeah, let's start from
Because
the beginning.
so Mariah May, who, as we've talked about in the past, started her career in Stardom. At the time of her coming to AEW, she had only been wrestling 10 months, like completely. And she had a good run in Stardom, had some good matches there, won the tag titles with Mina, and then of course she started to get noticed. AEW, WWE. So she comes to AEW, and day one, she asks RJ City to meet Tony Storm. And that led to Tony Storm kind of latching on in a Mariah kind of latching on to Tony Storm without Tony Storm really even noticing her. And the relationship kind of like built over time. At first, Mariah wanted Tony to notice her and watch her matches and be there for her and be her mentor and all of that. And Tony didn't really want anything to do with her. At times, she didn't even notice she was there until it got to a point where Mariah was becoming a factor in Tony Storm's matches and proving herself to Tony Storm and showing her loyalty to Tony Storm to the point where Tony Storm started to like her, started to want to mentor her, starting to want to be around her and be there for her and be ringside for her matches. And in the background, Luther, who is quote unquote the butler of Tony Storm, never ever liked Mariah.
No.
He was in the background making faces and shaking his head and never was on board with Mariah tagging along. So once they finally have like this relationship, they're kissing each other on screen like a lot.
Okay, yep.
Around the time that Mina Shirakawa shows up.
Yes, and there was more kissing.
And there was more kissing. Mina Shirakawa and Mariah have a strong bond again from their time in Stardom. She was Mariah's first mentor, first person that took her under her wing, first person that got her to where she is in wrestling. And she just wanted her two friends / mentors to get along and be friends so she could have both of them. And that's what happened at Forbidden Door when they faced off and had a hell of a match. And at the end of the match, they hugged, and then there was a 3-way kiss, which was very awkward. So that led us to the Owen Hart tournament, right?
Yes.
So in the build up to the Owen Hart tournament, they talked about how Tony wanted Mariah in that tournament to prove herself even further, even after it was announced that the winners of both tournaments would face the world champions of their divisions at All In.
Mm-hmm.
Tony Storm was fully on board with Mariah being the person to face her. Was it in out of respect and expecting to have a great match between friends, or was she going to go into All In and expect Mariah to lay down for her? We'll never know, because the night that Mariah wins the tournament,
Mm-hmm.
after all this time of gaining the trust of Tony Storm, becoming a close personal friend to Tony Storm being there for her at every waking moment, as soon as she wins that tournament and earns that title shot, which she had gotten opportunities to earn at previous times and did not, once she finally secured that title shot, the moment that she put her hands on that trophy, which happens to be a belt,
Mm-hmm.
she hits Tony Storm directly in the face.
Yeah, I mean, this was the level of, if I may say, this was the level of Tommaso Ciampa driving Johnny Gargano's face into like the boards at
Yeah.
NXT Takeover. This was equivalent of like what was the last big turn that was really surprising me? I don't know if you want to draw it back, maybe like Shawn Michaels versus Marty Jannetty. I don't know if that
Uh-huh.
counts, but the way that this was done was so like cinematic. Look, if I want to do it like
Yes.
in a Tony Storm way, like they were running up this ramp together. It was weird because at the men's match finals, you had Martha Hart presenting the trophy to Brian Danielson. There was
Yes.
nobody that came out. It was like, oh,
Well,
when
I
you look
think
back at
so.
it, it was like, what? They're just running up together, and then as soon as Mariah takes about wham, and I'm like, holy shit! Because this whole
Yeah.
time you expect the turn to come from Tony Storm because, like, she was gonna turn on like this upstart who now is gonna try to take the title from her, but no,
Yeah.
Mariah wails on Tony with the belt over and over. She kicks Luther in the nuts, hits him with the belt, and then proceeds to basically kick him off the ramp and put him through like 2 tables on the ground. By this time, Tony Storm is a bloody mess. I must have gotten hit by the belt somehow, and then Mariah proceeds to use the heel of her shoes to
Uh-huh.
just start ramming the heel in a Tony Storm's forehead. And we've got like
And
one of the best pictures of like a bloody Tony Storm just in agony as Mariah is just gloating over. Mariah is smearing Tony Storm's blood onto her own
yes.
face.
And this goes back to the whole time that they were building their relationship, where Tony Storm would have Mariah like leaning on her and holding her, and then you get like this sadistic version of Mariah, who is finally like has to have had this plan all along, has to have had used Tony Storm in a way to win her over and to get this opportunity. And this has been documented, I think, on like podcasts and stuff, but RJ City had a big role in this story. RJ City is a cinephile. He's into like all those old films and stuff. And the storyline beat is basically frame for frame in a longer drawn out sense the movie All About Eve.
Well, remember in the beginning, the post that announced that Mariah May was all elite. Uh, the last line on that post was, "It's now AEW is all about Mariah."
Yeah.
And looking at another clip, like one of the backstage segments that Tony and Luther and Mariah were doing, I'm not sure if this was no, this wasn't for because of the Owen Cup. There was a thing where like I don't know, there was something that led to Mariah like maybe possibly getting a title opportunity, or she was put in a match where the winner was gonna get one, but Mariah didn't win. Tony was like, "This is your plan to try to take the title from me, aren't you, Mariah? You've just been scheming all this time." And this was months before this turn. And Mariah was like, "No, no, no, that's what I'm doing." But it was like she saw it. She knew what was she had an idea of what was happening. But I mean, it just kind of came like boom out of nowhere. It just happened. I think they did it very well. And the way they ended that shot where like Mariah's standing over a bloody Tony Storm and they just pan the camera up to look at the big screen. It's a graphic of their match at All In. I'm like, oh boy.
Yeah.
This whole thing just completely changed. Like,
Yeah.
we thought Mariah was gonna get like a hometown girls welcome in London, her home country.
Yeah.
Now it's like, oh shit. I mean, she'll still get cheered, but it's like, oh no, she did this terrible thing. Like, oh, how is this gonna be turned out? And like Tony Storm might become the hometown hero at this point because, like, of all this that happened. Well,
Mm-hmm.
she's gonna get the reaction. And what I'm interested in to see is like, there's no way I don't feel that we can come back and just watch the weird, timeless Tony Storm from the 1950s. Like, I won't expect Tony to reappear for like a month and a week or so at this point. Like she's got
Yeah.
to be off television for a while.
So yeah, we are at time of recording, we are almost 6 weeks or like 5.5 weeks out of All In.
Hmm.
So yeah, I don't think the Tony Storm needs to come back right away. Of course, you can have Mariah. So first week after the turn, have Mariah go on screen and explain herself. Um, then the week after that, have her have matches with whoever and just beat them like miserably, and then don't have Tony Storm come back until at least August, I would say. So you're like fully into the build of All In at that point. And but yeah, this was a star making moment, which shouldn't really surprise most people. Mariah has picked up wrestling better than I think most people have in her very short time in doing it. And she has everything. She has charisma. She can do it in the ring really well. She has all the tools to be a superstar. And this was a star making moment in her. I think people kind of expected her to turn at some point, but didn't expect it to happen so quickly. But because of how quickly it happened, the surprise made it even that much more important. And yeah, I'm really looking forward to the continued build to this match. I want to see what Mariah is going to do in the in between time. Um, I think people, I think people would expect her to win at All In, but you never know. Um, I mean, AEW had become the place where you do win at your home in your hometown, but there's been certain instances where that was not the case. And is All In that for this? I don't know. Um, I think that it would be best for Mariah to win the belt because I think it would be better in the long run for Tony Storm to have a longer hiatus away after losing the belt and coming back as the Tony Storm of old.
Yeah. We'll see what happens. As you said, there's 5 weeks until All In, so and we'll have to see what how they build Mariah post this turn at the end of that Owen Cup. Since we're still on AEW, let's jump to like this a wider sort of another feud in AEW, and it's sort of like I guess this is a different sort of a different one because it involves multiple people, but it's AEW versus the elite inside AEW. So it's almost like a
Yes.
WCW versus NWO kind of thing.
Yes.
And this stems from well, I guess it starts with the Young Bucks who reemerged a couple months ago as like this new version of themselves leading up to this retirement match against Sting and Darby Allin at Revolution, where they basically played off the whole succession to show succession, where they basically leaned into their roles as EVPs of All Elite Wrestling and came flying in like private jets and dressing like with like $100 couple $100 sneakers and just like coming in
Yeah.
like acting like the EVPs that they are. Like, they're basically taking over the
Yeah.
show in the back and telling everybody what to do and just like
Well, just to add to that.
yeah.
So this is something that the Young Bucks do a lot
Hmm.
is that they take their online criticisms and turn them into character work and just turn it up to like 100 because that's been a thing on social media where people are saying like, oh, the Young Bucks are just using their EVP status to get this and put over their friends and this, that, and the other thing. And oh, so they're using that to not only troll the audience, but to make this obnoxious character. That's what they, and again, that is something that they have done their entire careers, because they did the same thing in ROH and New Japan when people said they didn't sell, or that they didn't tell stories in the ring, or that they didn't tell stories at all, that they were just flashy guys that did stuff in the ring and that was it. And then they turned that into Matt Jackson having a back injury for 7 years. So this is just what the Young Bucks do. They take their criticisms that they see on the internet, their most common criticisms, turn it into a storyline, and then just dial it to 100.
Yeah, and the way they developed this was at first, they're just the EVPs, or they're just flexing their muscle as executive vice presidents a little more. And then they started like doing stuff that was like making you think, oh, this is gonna lead to some feud in the future. So they first of all they fired they fired, when quote unquote, two members of the elite from their stable, Kenny Omega and Hangman Adam Page.
Well, Hangman was suspended, not
Well,
fired.
Hangman, okay, yeah, you're right. So Kenny Omega was fired because he didn't show up, but Kenny Omega developed diverticulitis, which is no laughing matter. It's a serious, serious condition that requires major surgery. So Kenny Omega was at this time resting at home because he couldn't do anything.
Yeah, so
Hangman was suspended because of actions he took, I think, during the Revolution Triple Threat match.
yeah, so
And
he was
yeah,
suspended for attacking officials.
yes, now I
Um,
remember. Yes,
but Kenny Omega was suspended because he hadn't been to work in like 2 months. And the reason that he was not to work in 2 months was because of the diverticulitis. So
exactly.
so they just took that into like a troll job of like, "Oh, Kenny, you haven't been to work, so we
Yes,
kind of
Kenny, you haven't shown up for your mandatory uh,
yeah,
number of appearances per month. I'm sorry, man. We're gonna have to fire you from the elite.
yes."
uh,
So
yeah.
so in turn after that, the Young Bucks kind of going into this you know, uh overtaking of things on television,
Mhm.
and
They're in the production truck. They're like turning people's
yes,
mics off and stuff like that.
and they're like starting a feud at the time with Eddie Kingston,
Yes.
who was at the time by himself just against the Young Bucks. And who would come out but the newly signed Kazuchika Okada? Now, people immediately, I think, assumed, oh, Kazuchika Okada is going to help Eddie Kingston because Eddie Kingston is the kind of guy who respects Japanese talent and uh, admires Japanese talent. And he would, in turn, join the elite and basically take the best bout machine role of the elite from Kenny Omega.
Yes. Hey, Okada-san. We have a opening in the elite. We need a guy
Yeah.
to fill the role of best bout machine. Would you be able to fill that? Yes.
Yes.
Yes, beach.
Yes.
So basically,
Uh, so it was reported that Tony Khan's vision of Okada in AEW always was this, that he always expected that Okada could
oh
be a
man.
great, like, snobby heel. And since that day, it's been great. Um, they've had the all the stuff with Eddie Kingston and all the stuff with and Okada winning the Continental Classic, the
The
Continental
Continental title
Championship
from Eddie. Yes.
from Eddie Kingston, because nobody expected that Eddie Kingston would go and defend that belt against Okada and just win. I mean, Eddie Kingston's great, but he's not that great
Yeah.
in context of the
Right.
story, because he's not Okada. He's not one of the best wrestlers in the world. So Okada, now the Continental Champion, and the Young Bucks, who would eventually win the tag titles after Sting and Darby relinquished them after Sting going out on top. And in that time, there was little Easter eggs here and there because we hadn't seen Jack Perry since All In. He was quote unquote suspended. Well, I think he actually was suspended for real because of a fight that would eventually get turned into an angle that was on TV, but a real fight that he had with CM Punk that ultimately led to CM Punk being fired from AEW. The Young Bucks would use that
Yeah,
as
this was controversial at the time in terms of they said they were gonna show the video. I think I'm trying to remember. Did this
well,
happen just
this
around
was
the time
during so
that
they were
Punk?
feuding with FTR again.
Yeah, yeah.
And they said in storyline that this incident happened right before they were supposed to go out at All In to have a match against FTR for the
Yeah,
tag team
yeah,
titles.
yeah,
And that because of this incident, they were
yeah.
unable to focus on the biggest match of their careers at the
They
biggest
forgot
show.
they forgot to pray, Mike. That's what they said. They forgot
Yes.
to do their
And
prayer.
yes.
So nothing
So they
wrong with
were
prayer. It's just saying that they forgot to pray
so
because they were distracted dealing with
so in turn they basically said without saying it that that incident that caused CM Punk to get fired for real and for Jack Perry to get suspended for real was FTR's fault.
it. Yeah,
And
this was I would have to say this was very controversial at the time when it was used because people were like, okay, first of all, you just probably set a new world record of like CM Punk appearing on both Raw and Dynamite in the same week. Uh and then
yes,
like people are like, why are you using this like from months ago? It's like the guy's not even here anymore. And so when at
well,
first I thought they weren't actually going to show it. I thought this was like a gimmick for them to show some other stupid thing, but they
mhm,
actually did it, and I would have
yeah.
to say that's ballsy of them for doing that.
Well,
Nobody, I don't
in
think any
in
other company would. I don't think WCW would have done that. Like take clips of like someone from WWF that was in WCW at the time and then show it
yes.
months later. Very risky.
So this actually ended up working out brilliantly
I would say so.
because um of course people were going back and forth on social media like they always do about anything that happens in wrestling about whether this was the right thing to do. And I always liked it because I knew that it was being done to push a storyline. And I knew that it was going to be ultimately the reason that you use this footage for anything is to get Jungle Boy over, Jack Perry over when he returns, which happened to be in a match against FTR in a ladder match where he showed up and helped the Young Bucks to keep the titles. Or was it to win the titles for the first time? I don't even remember.
I'm trying to remember. It might have been to win the titles.
Win the
I
titles
think.
back or
Yeah, it was a
whatever.
ladder match. Remember?
Yes. So
Yeah.
it was a hell of a ladder match
Mhm.
that ended up being Jack Perry's first time back in AEW at the time since August. He was not really doing anything for a few months. Then he showed up in New Japan, joined House of Torture for some reason. And I guess because he was trolling CM Punk and Chicago and all of that. So why not put him in the group that just likes to troll wrestling in general? So yeah, so that was the day that Jack Perry finally returned to AEW and in turn joined the Elite. And I would say that in the long run of things, showing that footage is going to be more with each passing day and each passing show that Jack Perry gets better and better at this stuff, at this character, at this work that he's doing. Um, it was a positive to show that footage.
Yeah, and him coming back to AEW now leads into the other big moments that precipitated this whole AEW versus the Elite thing. Dynamite took place in their hometown base of Jacksonville, so they're back in Daly's place, and very significant episode, and as I'll explain why. So Jack Perry during his New Japan run actually went in the ring and tore up what appeared to be his AEW contract. So at that point, we were like, the status of Jack Perry is we're not really sure. So what they tried to do is that like Jack Perry came out, and this was at the end of that Dynamite at Jacksonville, and said, "Look, Tony, I'd like you to come out here. Let's bury the hatchet. Let's start over again." So Tony Tony came out and said, "Look, I'll resign with AEW. I just want to, like let's just start anew and let's just keep doing great things." And like Tony loves everybody, obviously, right? So they hug, and then I do recall Jack looking at the camera, looking at the hard camera, like it was his devious look, and then
He got that from Christian.
yeah,
He
yeah.
got
So
that from
he
Christian.
picked up a lot from Christian. I will say this. So as soon as they kind of stopped hugging, um, I don't remember if Jack kicked Tony in the balls or did he punch him in the face first. But he did one of those things.
I think it was a
I think he punched him
kick
in
to
the
the
face.
balls,
Or might have
but
been
it was a weird bump.
yeah, okay. Maybe I can like find it just to quickly take a look.
Um,
But yeah, he took down Tony Khan, and that was obviously a bit of a shock because
yeah,
we have not seen Tony Khan in any kind of physicality since AEW started. So therefore it was so I'm just yeah, okay. So Tony's got Jack's hands raised, like Jack's got both his arms up. They're cheering, Tony's pointing and then yes, Jack takes the microphone and does a gut shot in the
oh
Tony's
yeah,
stomach.
hits him in the head with the microphone, and
No,
then
he hits him in the stomach. Right? I'm watching it right now. He
oh
hits Tony in the stomach. Tony's crawling around. Matt and Nick Jackson and Okada come out and they're like, "What are you doing, man?" They rushed
well,
immediately.
I remember it being funny because he got hit in the stomach and then did a back bump,
Okay.
which was
They were like, okay, so the elite, the
so
rest of the
so
elite,
yes,
or yeah, they're
this brought
trying.
out the Young Bucks, and
Hmm.
they were like, "What are you doing? We're trying to get
Yeah,
your job back." Blah blah
yeah,
blah.
yeah,
And
right.
then
And
that
then
led
and
to
then and then Matt and Nick.
Okada. Wait, that led to
No, that
Okada.
Matt and Nick right now, as I'm watching, have both Tony's hands in their hands, and Okada is like trying to calm them down because it looks like they were about to BTE trigger Tony. And then
Yeah.
Okada is like giving two thumbs up, and then Matt just scoops up Tony, and then Nick goes to the top rope, and they deliver the Meltzer driver on Tony Khan,
Well, it's
which
now
it's now
now
the
called
TK driver.
yeah. Yeah.
And and yeah, TK takes the Tony Khan driver. And
Yes.
Matt and
So
Nick
and so
the elite are in the ring in Jacksonville. They look like they're just looking
so
around. What the
again,
hell's going on?
this was a very significant moment in the
Yeah.
history of AEW
Yes.
because this was a hostile takeover.
Yeah.
It was the guy that's been in charge since day one, who's never on TV,
Mhm.
or the only time that he is to announce something, whether it's good
Mhm.
or bad.
Yep.
And that, of course, again, turned into internet discourse of, oh, but Tony Khan said he would never get involved in stuff on television. And it was an angle, guys. Like, it was done for the greater good of the company. He's not going to come out and start having matches like Vince McMahon. Like,
The people who I think complain about that either haven't watched the Attitude Era when Vince inserted himself into like one of the main storylines that carried them through that entire era of Steve Austin, which was
yeah.
good. Like that was one of the best. Like that was one of the greatest things
He
done.
used a real life moment of screwing Bret Hart just to get the belt off of him to turn himself
into a bad guy.
The biggest heel on
Yeah.
television that led to him becoming a wrestler to face
Meanwhile,
the biggest name.
Tony is the one who the last time he came out to like take part in a storyline, he just said, I hate being put in this position. I never wanted to be on television, but Kenny Omega, you left me no choice. This was back during
Yeah.
Kenny's heel run as a champion. So and he didn't. I mean, this was part of the storyline, and he didn't do much after that because he had to play off with the neck brace because he took that TK driver,
Yes. So
which he
during
did
that
during the NHL draft.
NFL,
Yeah. Oh, sorry, the NFL draft. I'm sorry.
yeah. So
Yeah.
he wore the neck brace to the draft. He did interviews while wearing it, and Rich Eisen was very concerned about him. And he did interviews saying he was going to donate the brace to like a Rich Eisen's charity and stuff like that, and it again used it as a net positive, used the angle to get something else over or to help with something else, and so we didn't see Tony Khan on television at all, whether it be like backstage or anything, and they said that for for the whole week of like the first couple of weeks after the draft that he was staying in Jacksonville and that he was going to run Dynamite via satellite. But of course, the Young Bucks were going to be there, so they were just going to change stuff on the fly. That led to the return in the lightest sense possible, the return of Kenny Omega, who showed up and basically said, "So you want to fire me from the Elite? That's fine, but I still have EVP status, so I can make matches too, and I can do this, and you can't keep me from doing that." And that led to the Elite, all four of them, taking out Kenny Omega, which of course was done because we knew that Kenny Omega was due to have surgery. So in his hospital bed, he cuts a promo talking about how they're going to have anarchy in the arena. And unfortunately, Eddie Kingston was supposed to be involved with that, but he ended up getting a really bad knee injury. So that led to the Anarchy in the Arena match that included Darby Allin, who came back when he probably shouldn't have, just to have this match. Brian Danielson and FTR, right? That was the team. And
Yes. Let's remember how Darby Allin returned. Like they were doing a whole 4-on-3 beatdown kind of thing, and then suddenly they just pan outside, car pulls up, Darby Allin comes out, and Tony Khan is the driver.
yes,
And he's fist bumping Darby Allin.
that was the first time we saw Tony.
Yeah, that was the first time we saw Tony since he got taken out in Jacksonville. Darby comes
Yes.
in with, of all things, a fucking flamethrower.
Yes.
Which he used to like scare off the Elite. And we're like, what the hell?
Of course, we would later find out
Like
at that pay-per-view
that he actually used
Double or Nothing, that he actually used it to light Jack Perry on fire.
Yeah, and yes, I think the shock value worked too well because Tanner and I both were like really concerned that like, did they really have to actually use the flamethrower? I mean, the whole act of Darby coming in with a flamethrower already got the mind to create the violence in their mind already. Like, did you actually?
Yes.
But then you find out that okay, Jack apparently rehearsed this stunt months ago several times with a professional stuntman, and I guess when I recall back looking at it, he did dunk himself in the water in a spot with Darby during that whole melee, which I guess was part of preparing for the stunt, and he was wearing pretty baggy pants to look, as though he was, as a fire incident or looking like someone preparing to get put on fire. So,
and of course, at the time when we talked about that pay-per-view, it was crazy.
It was crazy. It was
they had all of that stuff happening, that crazy moment, and then Jack Perry being the person after
In this match.
after being lit on fire to just
Oh,
win the match with a standard wrestling move.
after he got into his own scapegoat scapegoat souped up truck and apparently tried to run
It's a
Darby over.
bus.
It was
It's
a
a bus.
bus, and he tried to run Darby over with it. And then
Yeah.
of all things that ended this match, like I remember watching the first Stadium Stampede. The match ended with Kenny Omega giving Sammy Guevara a one-winged angel off of the fucking bleachers into like a
Yes.
setup 10 feet below, and
You had all
this
this
match ends with a wrestling move. I'm like,
you had all
okay.
these gimmicks in the match that again, matches like that I love because I just love
Yeah, including playing the final countdown on a repeat loop to the concern of Matthew Jackson, who was like, we're
yes.
paying $200,000 per play on this song.
Yeah.
Stop.
So yes, that match and the elite winning and all of that has led to where we are now.
Yes.
Um the Young Bucks and Okada still are their respective champions.
Mm-hmm.
And then going into the build to Forbidden Door, Adam Copeland did something very dumb
Very stupid.
and
A 50-year-old wrestler.
got unfortunately had to be stripped of the TNT title. So they had that ladder match to determine the new TNT champion at Forbidden Door. Again, I was there. This was a hell of a match. Enjoyed the hell out of it. As soon as the field was announced, there was only two possible winners. One of them was Takeshita, and I knew that Takeshita wasn't winning because he's in the G1. So the only possible winner was and had to be Jack Perry. There was no reason for the ROH champion to be in this match, but he was. There was no reason really to have Dante in there after his history of getting really hurt during ladder matches. Leo Rush was in there, and ELP was in there. El Fantasma. Hell of a match. Enjoyed the hell out of it. One of the best ladder matches I've seen in person. And I've seen a couple. I remember in the past not remembering if I had seen any ladder matches in person. I had. I saw a ladder war between the Briscoes, the Young Bucks, and Kazarian and Daniels, and I also saw Kevin Owens versus Finn Balor at NXT TakeOver Brooklyn. So this ladder match in particular had a lot more meat to it than Kevin Owens and Finn Balor. This was a lot of fun. Of course, Jack Perry won. And so now every member of the Elite has a belt. And we are building to Blood and Guts, which they announced ahead of Forbidden Door that it was going to be taking place on the last Wednesday of July, which is the
which is the 31st.
Oh, is it the 30th? I think it might actually be the week before then.
Oh, okay.
I don't remember the actual date. I know it's either the 31st or the week before. But so in that time, we find out that it's a 5-on-5 match.
Yep.
And the Elite only has 4 members.
Mm-hmm.
That begins the speculation. Who's it going to be? But I think we all kind of had an idea because we knew that Swerve was going to be in this match.
Yes.
And of course, we had the build to the Owen Hart on the men's side, where Adam Hangman Page returned for the first time since his suspension as the Young Bucks hand-picked wild card entrant. And he went to the finals to face Bryan Danielson for the 4th time ever. And Danielson won. In
an extremely brutal match, I would say.
Hell of a match.
Hell of a match.
But in the build to that match, the Young Bucks had already asked Hangman to be their fifth guy in the match, and he
Yeah.
said no
Right.
because his main focus was to get to Swerve and to win the tournament so that he could take the title from him on the biggest show of the year.
Hmm.
And after he lost, he realized that the only way that he could get his hands on Swerve was to be in this match.
Yeah. I think
Because
yeah, I think before you might I don't know if you already mentioned it, but there was a vignette like already like foreshadowing his return, where it was like just Hangman like hanging out in his house and like looking at clips of like Swerve and back in the background clips of Swerve at the time when Swerve invaded his house during
yep,
their rivalry around Wrestle Dream, and it was just like holy. So you've got Hangman drinking again. Now there's like this drunken Magnum TA lookalike that is gonna get sweet revenge on Swerve, and he couldn't get him through the Owen Hart Cup, so blood and guts.
yes, and as of this recording, the only members on Team AEW are Mark Briscoe and Swerve.
Yes, and my
But
prediction, yeah, it's
uh,
but Darby Allen I think is in it. It was Darby Allen.
I expect that Darby will be in it because he also returned
Yeah.
following Forbidden Door.
Yes.
And guess who else returned following Forbidden Door?
You said FTR.
FTR.
So here,
So
I don't know because like they've done FDR versus Bucks so many times. Like they've already done them, put them both teams in like a 5-on-5 situation. Um, Lately the acclaim has been like saying that they're like trying to get at the Young Bucks, and I don't know. I was kind of an outside chance that the acclaim are gonna be in Blood and Guts, but
I mean, I think obviously that is a possibility. The Acclaim do have a tag title shot lined up.
mhm.
I hope that that's not going to be at All In. I hope that they're going to do that before All In, and the Young Bucks do something else at All In. Um, but I don't know if I want to see the Acclaimed in Blood and Guts. I
Yeah, I mean, I know your criticisms towards like certain people, like Max Caster, for example, but yeah, they do look seemingly out of place in a match like Blood and Guts, which FDR has been probably in a good chunk of the Blood and Guts matches in the last couple of years, so they're probably more used to that environment.
uh, almost all of them, right?
Yeah, you might be right because they were in the Pinnacle with MJF, and they were in that one. And I'm
Yeah.
trying to remember. There was the Elite versus the BCC.
Maybe
Maybe
they weren't in that one,
they weren't in. I don't think they were in that one.
but
Uh,
they've been in most of them.
yeah, most of them.
Um, but yeah, so I don't know. I mean, FTR came back to
I missed Collision, but what were they doing? Were they just doing a run in, or was it like a backstage
uh
interview?
so they came back to help um was it to help Top Flight against Shane Taylor Promotions?
Oh, okay.
I think. Hold on. I have to be sure. I can't off the top of my head remember. But yeah, so FTR's back, Darby's back. Um it Mark Briscoe and Swerve are already in the match. Those two are like tailor made for that. Oh, they came out. Okay, I remember now. So they came out when Tommy Billington was being attacked by the Don Callis family.
Okay.
So
Oh,
Tommy Billington had a one-on-one match with Konosuke Takeshita, which was a hell of a match. Uh, Tommy Billington, of course, is the nephew of the
yeah.
Dynamite Kid, and he's still very very young. He's like 23. Um, and yeah, him and Takeshita had a great match, and Callis wanted Billington to join the Callis family.
Mm-hmm.
Um, and he was thinking about it, and he shook Don's hand, and then Don asked for an answer, and he basically said hell no. And then Takeshita and after Don slapped him, Takeshita and Fletcher would go after him, and then FTR would come out to make the save.
Okay. So I was just looking at the history of the Blood and Guts matches. So they started in 2021. And the first one was the Pinnacle versus the Inner Circle.
Yep.
The second one was actually the BCC, Santana Ortiz and Eddie Kingston.
Ah, okay.
They beat the Jericho Appreciation Society. And then the one from last year was the Golden Elite versus the Blackpool Combat Club. So yeah, actually FTR was not in Blood and Guts that many times,
Oh,
but
okay. I don't know
yeah,
why
but
it just felt like they were.
yeah,
Right?
I don't know.
Like,
I mean, yeah,
I
they want
think
to put,
I think it ended up just being a BCC match more than a
but I'm just the way the storylines are developing with the Acclaim
yes.
being mixed in all this. I just thought it'd be more natural
Yeah.
that they would be involved in this Blood
So
and Guts
I mean,
match.
I don't know because what is FTR going to be doing with the Callis family? The Callis family is now down to 2 members again because now
Yeah,
Trent
Will
is
Osprey left. Will Hobbs is on the shelf.
and now
Will
Trent is
Osprey, yeah.
and
Yeah,
now Trent is hurt.
Trent's yeah, after getting Trent's injured for unspecified period of time and was written off the show
Yeah.
after Orange
And
Cassidy hit
and
him
of
with a
course
bench.
as we mentioned, Takesh is in the G1. The G1 starts on the 20th.
Yeah.
So what is going to be the point of the Callis family going forward?
Well, yeah, I don't know. We were talking about AEW versus the Elite, but yeah, let's do a
But
little
yeah,
side
I mean,
note
this is
about
just part of it.
There's
But
the
yes,
whole, what is related to the Elite because if Kenny Omega wasn't like out with diverticulitis and needed major surgery, he would have still been involved with this Callis family business. And unfortunately, stuff happened, and I think they kind of just can't figure it out since one of the main protagonists has been sidelined. So yeah, I mean, but as for this whole Elite versus AEW versus the Elite business, it's gonna probably go on for
yeah.
a bit. I
I
mean,
don't think Blood and Guts is going to be the
it
culmination
is not. I would assume that
because
it's just
it's
the
got to
next
be all
step.
in. It's got
Yeah,
to be like,
yeah,
of course, the main thing that has been on everybody's mind since the Kenny Omega Okada interaction is Okada versus Omega at All In. You finally got these guys together in the same company in a feud that they are both a part of. But if Kenny can't go at All In, what do you do? Of course, Hangman is still at odds with the Elite, even though he is teaming with them. And
mm,
he did have a stare down with Okada. So that's why my belief is if Omega is not good to go by All In, then you're probably going to do Hangman versus Okada.
yeah. Let's remember like this that Hangman is sort of a wild card. I mean, he literally was a wild card, but he is a
Yes.
wild card in all of this because he only just like aggressive agreed to be in Blood and Guts just to get at Swerve.
Yep.
Yeah, the Young Bucks had suspended him previously. I mean, he's probably still more mad at Swerve
Oh, of
because of
course,
the whole
because
family stuff
I
that
mean,
wasn't
this entire angle is
fruitful.
built off of the home invasion.
Yeah.
And Swerve, who was a heel at the time when he did that, just to get at Hangman, is
Mhm.
now loved. And he hates the fact that the fans love him now because you shouldn't love somebody who breaks and enters into somebody's house with a baby in it.
Oh my gosh. Okay. So yeah, we're gonna see where this
So
turns out.
everything
But
is kind of intertwined going into All
yeah,
In.
yeah, this is a interesting one to discuss because it basically involves almost the entire company, at least the top
Well, yeah,
guys in this company.
and
So
I guess this is a perfect segue because at the time, the Elite was also going after MJF. When MJF came
yeah,
back, uh,
interesting
the
development.
Elite selected Hechicero to face him because,
It was kind of odd. I mean, you're used to MJF fighting against guys who can do a promo back at him, but in
yeah.
this case, he
Well,
can't really.
this was because when MJF returned, he made reference to the Elite and what was going on in the company, and
Yes,
the
yes.
Young Bucks did not like that. So at the time, Christian and the Gates of Agony, or Cage of Agony as they're called now, were all kind of under the Young Bucks' finger. And this was connected to Swerve and also connected to MJF because MJF, of course, wanted to have a match at Forbidden Door because of where it took place, which was on Long Island. And that ended up being against Hechicero. And this was a fine match for what it was. Uh, MJF looked great in there for his first match back. Hechicero is great from what we've seen from him, from the little that I think. So I would say that out of every relationship that AEW has had, CMLL was probably the most unknown to their fan base. And Hechicero just kind of came out of nowhere and had a hell of a match with Danielson, and then had a fun match with MJF at Forbidden Door. So that leads us to our next feud, I guess, our next topic, which is the newest feud that kind of just started that we kind of saw coming um based on some things that were happening, but MJF versus Will Ospreay. So MJF comes back, as we mentioned, basically still in the character he was before he left, where the fans kind of are behind him, and he said he's still going to be the MJF that we love. He's just going to be more cerebral and more vicious towards his opponents, and he wasn't going to have any more friends, and that he was done trusting people. And it was really odd that weeks after he said that, he comes out in Buffalo and basically says that, well, he gets interrupted by Danny Garcia, who originally he said he was going to call out anyway, and said that he was basically very proud of the guy that Daniel Garcia has become, and that he loves the wrestler that he's become, and that he would be honored to face him at All In. Of course, in that time, Daniel Garcia had been calling out Will Ospreay for a shot at the international title. At the time, Will Ospreay was kind of putting that to the side because, as international champion, was challenging the world champion at Forbidden Door. Hands down, match of the year candidate, Will Ospreay and Swerve. So that led to Will Ospreay basically saying, I've heard that you've been calling me out for a shot at this belt, so how about after Forbidden Door, after I win the world title, we face on Dynamite Beach Break, the first Dynamite after Forbidden Door, for both belts. Of course, Ospreay did not win the world title, so it just ended up being an international title match. So in that time, Will Ospreay and Daniel Garcia kind of create this bond over the fact that they kind of came up in the business together, and MJF respect the hell out of him for the way that he has performed recently and has really gotten into the role that he's in, which is just him getting better and better and turning into a superstar. So Beach Break comes along, and MJF, who I think at the time we probably should have saw this coming because he was wearing a white tank top and a jacket, says to Daniel Garcia backstage that he wants to be in his corner for his main event match against Will Ospreay for the international title. Daddy Magic, who is still a very big supporter of Daniel Garcia, accepted this stipulation and shook MJF's hand. And the match was great. Will Ospreay and Daniel Garcia had a hell of a match. And towards the finish, MJF, who is again in Daniel Garcia's corner, wants him to use the Dynamite Diamond ring to win the match. And Daniel Garcia thinks about it and then just gives him the ring back and immediately turns into a hidden blade and loses. And just to add on to the build to this, Will Ospreay and MJF had interacted a couple of times before, but they did not acknowledge each other. They ended up in like a brawl that was leading up to Forbidden Door, and I think it was Will Ospreay who saved MJF, but MJF didn't want to acknowledge him, and they basically just disrespected each other on both nights because that happened, and then the interaction where Daniel Garcia and MJF were talking, and then Will Ospreay interrupted. They basically upstaged each other on multiple occasions without actually saying a word to each other. So Daniel Garcia loses to Will Ospreay. It's basically MJF's fault that he lost to Will Ospreay, and MJF takes the blame and says that it was his fault. I shouldn't have made you try to use the ring. Blah blah blah. You could have just won. And again, we should have saw this coming, because whenever a heel or anybody wears white, there's usually a reason.
Oh man.
There's usually a reason. And so Will Ospreay leaves the ring after showing respect to Daniel Garcia. MJF hugs Daniel Garcia and then kicks him in the dick. Then proceeds to beat the shit out of Daniel Garcia and hits a tombstone off of the top rope, which then prompted Will Ospreay to come out because apparently he didn't know it was happening until after the tombstone.
Oh boy.
So Will Ospreay makes the save after the tombstone. Daniel Garcia, Daddy Magic tried to make the save, but MJF hit him with a diamond ring loaded fist, busted him open, supposedly gave him a concussion in storyline, because since he's been back on TV, he's been wearing sunglasses. And Daniel Garcia is presumed, quote unquote, injured from the attack. Of course, building up to probably the return either before or at All In, I would think. So MJF does this promo, one of his best promos ever. Basically, he shows footage from when he was AEW World Champion about how he was bullied as a kid for being Jewish, and talked about how he was treated as a kid for being Jewish. And he had never done that. He had never opened up like that to the crowd, to anybody, and saw that as the fans accepting him when he did that. But over time, he talked about how when he lost the title to Samoa Joe, that at that show in his hometown, basically people were cheering for Samoa Joe to beat him. And
yeah, I'm trying to remember. I watched that show in World's End too. I don't entirely remember that happening.
Well, there was people there
why.
There was people there that chanted "Thank you, Joe." So that was part of the angle, basically. And okay. So MJF basically said that Daniel Garcia, it wasn't personal with Daniel Garcia. Daniel Garcia was just the person that was made an example of. because his problem isn't with Daniel Garcia. His problem is with the audience because of the fact that they turned on him after he had been so open with them about how he was treated as a child. And I thought it was one of his best promos ever. And then he talked about how Will Ospreay is not the best wrestler in the world, like people say that he is. He's just a flash in the pan kind of um, high flyer who does flashy stuff, and that he doesn't even compare to the wrestler that MJF is. And of course, they did the whole play the theme song of the guy that you're calling out, and then he's not in the building thing. Um, MJF called out Will Ospreay and the music played, and then MJF put on a smirk, and Tony Schiavone was like, "Oh, he knows that Will Ospreay's not here." And then they did the exact same thing with Will Ospreay, uh, and Will Ospreay talked about how uh, this was not his best promo. It was actually not that great, but he talked about how Tony Khan would much rather spend money on big talents like him and Okada and Mercedes rather than give MJF what he wants. Even though MJF already signed a new deal that's supposedly for more money than he's ever made in his entire life. Um, so that part of the bill didn't make much sense. I think Will Ospreay kind of misspoke a little in that promo. But I think the moment that they started interacting, when they had that little stare down but didn't really talk to each other or acknowledge each other, or MJF walked off, we knew that that was the all in match. The moment that they first interacted. But this Daniel Garcia stuff just cemented it. Time of recording, they announced for the biggest Dynamite they ever put together, which the upcoming Dynamite is the 250th episode. They have one of the biggest cards they've ever put together for a Dynamite in a while. They have Ospreay versus MJF for the international title. Then they have Swerve versus Okada. And then you had Mercedes had announced an open challenge, which ended up being answered by Nyla Rose on Collision. So Nyla Rose versus Mercedes. So
Yeah.
having this match on Dynamite, I don't think is a big deal because MJF has done this in the past where they announce a big match that he's about to have, and then there's some kind of shenanigans to set up a rematch at the pay-per-view. So I think what's going to happen is that they're going to have this match on Dynamite, and I'm sure it'll be good because it's MJF and Will Ospreay. But there's going to be some kind of shenanigans that leads to either some kind of DQ or MJF actually winning the international title, leading to a rematch at All in Wembley, where Will Ospreay will eventually win it back.
Mm.
I
Yeah,
think
like I mean, I don't like for me that I don't think MJF needs the international title. And him like doing some kind of screwy DQ finish probably is as good a setup to a rematch at All In as him winning the international title and then Ospreay taking it back at All In.
uh,
Um,
I
but
could go either way.
yeah, right now it's too early to tell. I mean, this feud really only started. As of this recording, their first match is taking place on Wednesday, and we're not going to see what else happens until afterwards. Until then,
But
so yeah,
you got two of the best wrestlers in the world about to go at it. And presumably again at All In. I am very intrigued to see how they work together, to see how the story goes from here. Um, and just to like close, I guess, on AEW talk in general. Um, there's been a lot of talk about AEW kind of being out of sorts right now, kind of having some kind of weird direction that not everybody's on board with. But you had all these core names return in the last couple of months. You had Britt Baker come back, Hangman Page come back, and now MJF is back, and he's back to the character, or at least in a amalgamation of the character that he was at the very beginning of AEW. So AEW is really getting back to basics, and I can't say that that's a bad thing.
Yeah, and we'll have to see what happens then. Okay, we are at the 1 hour and 30 mark of this pod, so I think we can squeeze in maybe we've got one or two more things, feuds to talk about. So it's either this development with the Wyatt Six, or we can go into the Rhea Liv Dominic triangle.
Well, I would say that there's more going on with Rhea and Liv than there
Yes.
is right now with the
Yeah,
Wyatt.
the Wyatt
So,
thing at
so
this
just
point,
to,
there. Yeah,
yeah, I mean, the build and the reveal was great.
yeah.
They built this up for weeks with the Bray Wyatt esque stuff with the QR codes and the video messages and little hints in these video messages, and then of course they had that great reveal of the
Hmm.
debut at the end of a Raw where oh wait, was it a pay-per-view or a Raw?
No, it was the end of Raw. It
Yeah.
was June 17th, and they seemingly took out a whole bunch of people in the back that had the internet once again speculating it was everybody from Gunther to Carmelo Hayes to Cody Rhodes to Triple H.
And
I could
Braun
believe Triple,
Strowman.
yeah, Braun Strowman, but we didn't really see any of them. It was actually too dark for me in that scene to see.
Yeah.
Like all I saw was like backstage security,
Well, the only
and
person that they confirmed
was Chad
so
Gable.
was Chad Gable. So we of course we saw the first we saw the Abby the Witch character
Hmm.
played by Nikki Cross, very obviously played by Nikki Cross. It can't possibly be anybody else. But Michael Cole won't have you believe that. Michael Cole will just say, "Oh, this creature appeared."
It's like she
Uh,
called it. Oh, this thing is dropped off another VHS tape.
yes. So first you had Nikki Cross crawl out and do this weird like ring esque entrance. Then she points to the stage, and the camera does this long one shot
To the back.
just to the backstage. And first we go into Gorilla, and there's like all these wires sparking and people
Well,
knocked
before
out.
that, they went down the one corridor and they saw basically the rambling rabbit with the hammer.
Okay.
This is
Yeah.
played by
Okay.
Eric.
Yeah.
This was
That
played by
that was
Eric. Yeah, this was played by Eric Rowan. The mask is a really messed up version of a rabbit, but the back is
yeah
a tribute to his late partner Luke Harper, who once was a blood one as part of the Bludgeon Brothers. It was one
yeah
of the
that the
was
hammer.
Harper,
Yeah.
one of the old masks that was it was a mask behind a mask. That was
Yes.
a nice little
So
tribute to
so
Luke.
yeah he was there first. Then we
Yeah,
went into the gorilla
then
position,
when the gorilla
and
where there was all the
and there were
electronics
all
were
these electrical sparks and people
yeah,
knocked out, and
yeah.
then there's some one of them
Guy with
sitting
sitting cross-legged on
cross-legged on a crate. It was the Mercy the Buzzard,
yeah,
and this was Dexter Loomis.
yes, and
So
then
then we go further backstage and we see Huskus the pig,
yeah, in like a
and
pig-shaped gas mask. This
yes,
is
like a
played by
pig.
Joe Gacy.
And at the time, he was the one that was most like puzzling to me because everybody else I could figure out just by their body language and
Yeah, yeah.
their like he was the one I was unsure of. I had no idea who that was.
Oh,
and um, and then of course the right behind him was Uncle Howdy, of course, played by
yeah.
Bo Dallas.
Yeah, they panned to a shot where Chad basically looked like he was dead.
Yes,
Had a blood like a blood running down the side of his
he looked
face.
like he had a bullet wound in his
He
head.
looked like he got shot. And
Yes.
yeah, and then
So
they
of
panned to
course
Uncle Howdy.
there was all these memes going along like rest in peace Chad Gable and uh how is Chad Gable going to compete in a King of the Ring qualifier if he died?
I
And
mean,
Money in the Bank, sorry.
I
Money in the
was
Bank.
very disappointed that they didn't really carry through with that, and then just replaced Gable with
Well,
Dragunov
because
or somebody
they
else.
did a social media post where they said
Yeah,
Ilya was going to replace him, and then
yeah,
they
and
changed it
uh,
literally a day later.
yeah, that was
And
confusing to me. I don't know why they didn't just like do a thing because subsequently speaking, like all the interactions that Gable has had, he comes back and he says, "I just like survived the worst of the worst, and like I have no friends because like my stable has left me." And then his interactions with the Wyatts has been like sort of like just weird. Like the lights turn off, he's just left in a ring scrambling. Abby the witch comes out, and then he's just running away. And it's like, okay, this is sort of just they're not really interacting at this point. And
yeah,
all we're
so
seeing is the build towards who are these guys, right? Because we're being played these VHS tapes of
yes,
basically Bo Dallas or um Taylor Rotunda talking to himself as talking to Uncle Howdy. And then I guess the first 2 weeks of video were basically establishing Bo's character in that sense
yeah,
of who he is
but
with
he also dropped little hints of like people who have been wronged and
mm,
um how people have betrayed their own families,
yeah,
and
yeah.
I think
So
that is probably a hint as to why they are targeting Chad.
yeah,
And because in the build up to this, we had, of course, the Alpha Academy split of
yeah.
Otis finally putting Chad behind him. But then, as soon as that happened, Chad trying to apologize to them and saying like that after what happened, and he feels horrible about how he treated them, and realizes that he was wrong for acting the way he did. And so, as of right now, that's really all we know. Um, we have no other hints as to what is going on here because all we've seen since is tapes and Bo Dallas in Adam Pierce's office. And that's
Yeah, so
it.
the tapes, at least I think the tapes from last week was a little more revealing as to each of these characters were about. They
Yeah.
revealed that Joe was the guy behind the pig mask, and then they revealed that Mercy the Buzzer was Dexter, and they revealed I think the one with Eric Rowan was the one that cut the most deeper into real life because he was talking about how there's been loss, too much loss, and Eric, yes, he suffered the loss of two of the probably the closest people two of closest people in his life, Bray and
Brody.
Brody. So and then yeah, you get all these like mysterious clips of them like in these like cost in this in these personas, and then suddenly Adam Pierce opens his office and Bo Dallas is just sitting there, and you're like, oh wait, what?
Immediately after talking to Chad.
Yeah, and you're like, oh shit, what's gonna happen
Yeah.
now? So I'm very
Yeah.
intrigued. I'm not sure what kind of feud this is. I mean, you talk about how they're targeting people who betrayed their family. Chad's not the only one. I mean, you had Jay Uso kind of comically involved somehow. Jay was
Yes.
like yeeted
Well,
himself out of the ring before
he was
like,
in the match that after they
yeah, he was
first
in that
appeared.
match with Chad. But yeah,
And
Jay in a sense also kind of like turned his back on his own family. So who knows?
but they also what was really fun, I think the funniest thing that happened was how when the day of the debut, they did the whole thing where everybody was like taken out and all the security and
Yeah,
gorilla position people, and then they posted an interview
yeah.
with Jay Uso immediately after seeing all of these bodies light out, like just talking about his match.
It's like
Like
Hey Jay, how was your match tonight? Oh yeah, it was great. Everything was great. I had a big win. I had
I'm
my
going to Money in the Bank, guys.
yeah, going money back. Oh, by the
Well,
way, yeah.
that was really fun.
Never mind the
Oh,
absolute chaos.
and then Kathy just drops like, "Oh, so what was your reaction
Yeah,
to that thing that happened?"
Y-
Oh, I don't want anything to do with that. Moving
yeah.
on.
The Fireflies, they can have them back, and yeah, much
Yeah,
love to my boy Bray Wyatt, but the Wyatts are here, and now
yeah.
I'm
So
gonna go.
I just thought that exclusive video post Raw after that incident was hilarious because you have all these people just lied out, and then Jey Uso's just like, "Oh yeah, I'm going to Money in the Bank, guys. How about it?" Like,
Like, oh yeah, just another day in the office. Absolute chaos. Several of my coworkers look like they're
yeah,
seriously injured, or one my opponent looked like he died. So
yeah,
it's like whatever, dude. He's like, I'm gonna yeet on out of here. Yeet.
yeah. So yeah.
Anyway,
So as of right now, we don't know too much about what's going on here.
yeah, we could probably do a whole episode.
It's intriguing
Yeah, it's intriguing. We could probably dedicate a whole episode about it later on when there's more to
when
develop.
there's more. Yeah.
Yeah, but we're coming up to the end of our pod here, and let's close off by talking about one of the hottest things going on, literally and figuratively speaking, in WWE, and that is the bizarre situation where Dominic Mysterio has found himself in between Liv Morgan, the Women's World Champion, and the former Women's World Champion Rhea Ripley.
Yes.
Yeah, your opinions of Dominic Mysterio have been well documented, and
And they have not changed.
no, and they have not changed, and you probably even hate him even worse now because he's just attracted the attention of like two of the hottest women in this roster.
Yes.
Dominic
To
Mysterio,
while he's married and so
to
is
an
Rhea.
actual female in real life.
Yes.
Yeah, like this whole thing. Ever since Dominic Mysterio was with Judgment Day, he's been Rhea Ripley's like little Latino heat or like little dom and like whatever, all this stuff. Yeah, and then Rhea Ripley gets injured by Liv Morgan, who Liv has had issues with Rhea Ripley in the past.
Well,
Liv was
this has all been built up
Yeah, this stuff been built up. Liv was
because
injured
Liv,
by Rhea,
yeah.
and
So Liv,
then
when Liv came back, she said
yeah,
she was going to take everything from Rhea that she took from her.
yes,
And
and
so
yeah,
that
so
that started with the world title. Her plan wasn't to injure her. Her plan was to beat her for it.
yeah, the injury was
But
actually just a freak thing that kind of
the
played
injury was just
into
happened to be a freak thing,
yeah,
and then Becky won the belt and then
mhm,
lost it immediately to Liv.
right.
So now Liv has the thing that Rhea was
Yeah,
that Rhea
but at the beginning, after Rhea was like had to relinquish the title and leave for a while, and she had to leave Judgment Day for a while. Dominic started having these weird interactions backstage with Liv Morgan.
just seeing her and looking at her like weirdly.
Yeah, yeah,
And
and he came out during one of like Liv's matches, and I think it was during when she tried to I think the commentary was saying, "Oh yeah, like Dom is trying to cost Liv the title or whatever, or trying to stop her from winning the title because he's trying to keep an eye on it for mommy when she gets back."
yes.
And then
So
I think he
yeah,
was at because Liv won the title at Crown Jewel, was it? I think,
yeah, yeah,
and I think at that point it was like Dominic cost Becky the match, and Liv ended up getting the
yeah.
title, and then they're like,
So the
"Dom,
whole
you idiot! What have you done?"
so the whole angle was at the time that Dom was going to do everything in his power to make sure that Liv lost the title. Well, at first it was make sure that she doesn't win it,
Yeah.
and after that it was hope that she figure out a way to get her to lose it in order for Rhea to come back and reclaim it. But all of that just ended up badly for him because it would backfire every single time. And in the background, you have Damian Priest going, "What the fuck is going on here? Why is this happening?"
I just want to quickly
And
correct myself. It was not Crown Jewel. It was actually King and Queen of the Ring. That was the
well,
Saudi show.
it
Yeah,
was same country.
I was just making sure. I just want to correct myself because I said Crown Jewel earlier. But yeah,
Yeah,
Damien. It's like Judgment Day. It's like I think someone made. I don't know if somebody made an analogy that Liv Morgan is basically the Yoko Ono to the Beatles in this whole situation. Like now, she basically is like
Well,
she's
but I mean, the difference is that Yoko Ono didn't go out of her way to help the other Beatles.
yeah.
um,
It's surprisingly, because Liv has been actually very beneficial to Judgment Day. She helped Finn and JD win the tag titles on Raw.
get the title, get the title shot.
Getting the title shot, like convincing R-Truth to just
She
randomly.
she gave she gave them a PlayStation 5 and a
Oh my
TV
yeah.
and a she's basically been buttering up the entire uh uh Judgment Day and
Yeah.
Carlito.
Yeah, I mean, the whole idea that her whole revenge plot was, I thought it would be something epic, but apparently all it required was a PlayStation 5 and a bunch of chicken nuggets because that's what Dominic
Yes.
likes to eat. The only one
Yes.
she hasn't tempted is Damian Priest, apparently,
Of
which
course,
is very smart.
cuz he has other things going
Yeah, he
on
has
and
other.
more.
He is basically taking himself out of Judgment Day business and focused on the world title. But
Yes.
yeah, this
So
whole thing is just been comical to say the least, and the things
so
that
I
Liv and
think
Dom have done to each other is just yeah,
so obviously based on like what we saw with like her getting like she's gonna do the exact same thing to Dom that she's already done to like R-Truth, for example. She basically like convinced R-Truth to give Judgment Day a tag title shot just by being nice to him. And this happened while Miz was on commentary. So Miz had to leave commentary and then get ready for a tag title match, which they ended up losing. And uh, so I think that this is going to turn out to be a ruse, that she was using the Judgment Day in some form or fashion to to put the wedge in between Dominic and Rhea, because that would be another thing that she took from Rhea. And
yeah. So like this, all this temptation stuff has been building for months. Like Liv accidentally landing on Dom outside the ring, Dom doing the same thing, and Liv.
yes,
And then they get forced into a mixed tag match with Dominic's Rey Mysterio and Selena
yes,
Vega,
which
in which
culminates,
which culminates in Triple H reenacting his famous interaction with Trish Stratus, except
yes,
using Dominic Mysterio, who has apparently had a cramp in his leg, and so Liv
yes,
tried to stretch it out for him, and it looked like a very compromising position. And then at that
uh-huh,
point, the rest of Judgment Day comes in, and you got like probably one of the best meme shots, and where everybody was just looking at him. JD's like, do that
Finn
to
Balor and Big Head Finn Balor just
big
looking
head
across
thing,
the
just looking
corner.
like looking at the corner.
Yeah,
That was probably the just absolute hilarious cinema, and like
yeah.
Carlito
So
dropping in with like lines
yes,
that are not appropriate for PG television.
yes, of course. But of
And
course,
then yeah,
this culminates
this
in
culminates in that tag match.
Dominic beating his father for the
Yeah.
very first time ever,
Yes. Uh-huh.
which in turn make endears him to Liv,
Yes.
because all he's ever wanted was to beat his dad,
Yes.
and he finally did
And
because of Liv,
because of Liv.
which turned to him almost kissing her as
Yes.
a turn, like as a turn
Yeah.
of like,
Yeah.
you finally gave me, you or the person that gave me the thing that I've always wanted.
Just remember that
And
Liv actually kissed Dom first, but she forced himself on him. And now it's like,
yes,
is he gonna willingly kiss Liv at this point? And then just when
yes,
they were almost about to do it, you hear "This is my brutality," and
yes,
they teased it earlier. Damien knew something that the rest of the group didn't,
yes,
so
yep.
we were pretty clear with that.
So as you mentioned, this
Yeah.
leads to the return of Rhea Ripley.
Yes.
Liv runs for the hills,
Exactly.
and Dom is looking at Rhea like, "Oh, welcome back! I'm so happy to see you." And Rhea's like, "Get away
No,
from
no, no, Dom.
me!" And
You're in
he's
trouble now.
trying to get her attention, going up the ramp, and like in the background, the WWE posted a video of
Hmm.
Liv Morgan, who, after running up the ramp, looked out the curtain and had a big smirk on her face, like this, like this was the plan all along.
Yeah.
So obviously, we're going to see where this is going to lead to. But I assume, barring that, Rhea wouldn't be here. I think if she wasn't even like semi close to being cleared. So it has to be leading to a match between them at SummerSlam. And of course, Dom is going to continue to be in the middle of that. So let me just add that I get it. This is something that WWE has done in the past. They love doing these types of angles. These types of angles are not for me. I get it, but I get it. I understand WWE loves to do these types of things. They love to have two married people in the middle of a storyline where they're in love with each other. They love it. So it's just funny because if you look back at like Rhea Ripley's real life husband had an angle with Dominic's sister.
I almost forgot about that. That was
So
fucking weird. That was fucking weird. That was
yeah. So yeah, it's like I said, this stuff is not for me. I get it. It's going to lead to hopefully to a good match between Rhea and Liv. Dominic has done his job, which is the only positive thing I could say.
I mean, the only
about
thing that would
him.
make sense that will come in the next couple of months out of this is uh like a split between the Judgment Day in terms of
Yes.
Finn and JD might be more naturally inclined towards Liv now because she helped them win the tag titles.
Well, yeah, and there's also
At this
been little
point,
teases.
the
There's also
only thing that would make sense at this point is for Dom to go through some sort of redemption arc and reconcile with Mommy, and her and him are still with Damien at some point for some reason.
the bigger reconciliation would be him and Bray, but I assume they're going to save that for something else. But yeah, there's been little teases that Finn Balor might know more than he's letting on. Because of course there was like the hotel room key thing, and Liv left her hotel room key for Dominic, and then Finn took it, and Damien addressed that. He's like, "Oh, what'd you do with the key?" He threw it away. And then there was the other time that it was Finn was playing video games, and Liv was the only other person in the room, and so there's been little teases that Finn is in on this in some way. That maybe he's not been a fan of how Damien has handled things recently.
Yeah,
So
I mean, like they've had a lot of tensions between how Judgment Day has been doing since Rhea left, so
yeah,
there's definitely something to be looked at there. But for now, we'll have to see what Rhea says on Monday night after
yeah,
this recording. And with that, that's our kind of roundup on some of the hottest feuds going on in pro wrestling lately.
yeah.
Yeah, and
So yeah. Before we get out of here, just want to address. So as of right now, there's a lot going on in both of our lives. So we might not be able to do this as often as we would like. And sometimes there might be longer breaks in between episodes, and that's fine. But we are still committed to doing this. And we do have big plans in the future for stuff that we are planning out with Tanner. We just have to plan it all out and make it work for all of our schedules because we all got stuff going on.
right. Okay,
So
yeah,
I just wanted to throw that out because people who are committed to seeing and hearing us might not be aware of that. Um, so just there will be some big stuff going on in the future that we're excited about doing. But if there is big breaks in between, it's just because there's a lot going on.
Yeah. Thank you for just clearing the air on that, Mike. And with that, we're gonna sign off. And thank you for listening.
Yeah.
And remember to watch
J-
the rest. Is there something you want to add?
well, I just to plug the link
Okay.
tree,
Okay. Yeah.
linktree / going over big time podcast, where you can get all of our social medias as well as a Facebook and a Twitter for the podcast itself, and all of the ways to listen and to watch this podcast. And yeah, that's going to do it for me. And Alan,
Hmm.
close us out.
All right. Well, thank you very much. And with that, watch the wrestling you want to watch, and not necessarily what people are telling you to watch. So, and thank you for listening. Have a good day.